Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Habari zenu. I'm so happy to be back in Tanzania. I was here last year. I had trainings in Zanzibar, Bukoba, Mwanza, Dar, and I'm so glad to see some of the youth that I worked with. I've seen Hiraj at your window. And I've also seen Kevin. I think I worked with the youth with disabilities in Tanzania. So I'm so happy to be here. So our project mainly was in Tanzania, Liberia, DRC, and Cote d'Ivoire. And I loved Tanzania so much because we did a lot of good work. Thank you so much for the introduction. I was thinking, now who is that being introduced? No wonder I didn't stand up immediately. I was confused. So for self-description, I'm slightly tall, I'm brown, I wear braces, I have sister locks, and I'm putting on a black and maroon dress. Thank you and welcome to this presentation. So it's just about how people with disability can take advantage of social media or digital media to advocate for themselves. So this is because we say mainstream media that does not give people with disabilities a chance. Do we see stories of people with disabilities in the media? We rarely see them. And when we see the stories, it's about the stereotypes that has been talked about here. So if we don't have access to mainstream media, that is radio, TV, newspaper, we can take advantage of social media because social media is the media that we can own as people with disabilities or even as people without disabilities. And we can use it to do a lot of advocacy. But however, there is still problems because many of Africans do not have access to social media. Also, people with disabilities have not taken full advantage of social media for self-advocacy. And that's why I think this workshop and training is very important for us because after this, we'll have all the skills we need so that we can represent ourselves well in the media. So what is the power of media? Social media can play an important role to influence societal attitudes towards disability, and this in turn can influence societal attitudes towards people with disabilities. Because we can do this by documenting positive and success stories of persons with disabilities, utilizing progressive language to report people with disabilities, and also do self-advocacy. I'm also insisting on language because if we don't change the language that we use, even as people with disabilities, then we are not going to change the narrative. Hatutabadilisha sura ya disability kwenye media, be it social media or mainstream media. That's why it is very important for us to know how to represent ourselves very well in the media, because if we don't know the right language and representation, then we'll continue with the stereotypes. For example, we are changing the language we use. Like there was an organization known as Handicap International, but now they are calling themselves Humanity and Inclusion. Because, for example, the word handicap, the way it came into place, during the Second World War in France, people, after the soldiers fought so hard in the war, they lost their limbs, they lost their legs, so they became people with disabilities. And then they used to go to the streets, they removed their hat and put in their hands, and then they start borrowing. That's how the word handicap came. So they were just people who are borrowing. So that's how the word handicap came about. But that was a long time ago when people with disabilities were looked at as people who cannot be able to work, people who just need pity, people who need to be given a lot of some money and help. But for a very long time, the stereotype has changed. People with disabilities are doctors, they are officers, they are lecturers, they are scholars. So we cannot continue using the word handicap. And that's why so many people have changed from handicap to people with disabilities. So we need to also understand the language. So during our training, we looked at it and we saw language is still a problem. And if we don't change the language, we are still mainstreaming the stereotypes. Another word is albinism. So for East Africa, people in East Africa, the word albinism, how do we call people with albinism? 00, right? What does 00 mean? Anyone? 00, yes?
It's 0 and 0, that you have nothing in your mind, in your head, and you cannot do anything.
Anything. So 00, and also it also means an evil spirit. So if you continue calling people with albinism 00, what does it mean? That's why we continue seeing the harmful things that happen to people with albinism. You see people with albinism in Tanzania and in Zambia, they're still being hunted down. Their limbs are being cut. Why? Because they believe people with albinism contain evil spirit, and they can use that, their maybe body parts, and they can take it to waganga, so to witchcraft, to make money. So that's we are saying language is very important. So as we are even representing ourselves on social media, which language are we using? Which language are we using? That's why it is important. Which pictures are we giving out there? And for a very long time, even in Kenya, I never saw a burial or a funeral of a person with albinism, because people just believe they disappear. But they don't disappear. They are hunted down, they are taken to witchcraft, they are killed. So those are the social stereotypes and stigmatization that are brought about by language. And that's why it is very important for us to know, even as are we going to the social media, which language are we using? Which stories are we telling? How are we representing ourselves on social media? And when we were doing our training, it was not just journalists who doesn't know. Even people with disability themselves don't know the right language, and they don't know why we use that language. That, like in Africa, we say people with disabilities. We say people with disabilities because we cannot say disabled. If you say disabled in our vernacular languages or in Kiswahili, ni kiwete, kiguru, it's just something which is just disorganized or broken. So that's why you have to say people with disability, because we are people first, then the disability. Mtu mwenye ulemavu. So we continue breaking stereotypes like mlemavu, what you say people first, because the human rights says a person, then disability. And then we don't say people living with disabilities, because people with disabilities live with their husbands, wife, girlfriends, children. So only people with disabilities. So as advocates, as the youth with disabilities, we really need to know these terminologies and the importance, so that we can be able to break the stereotypes that we're being talked about. So why it matters, it has been explained. Because many times when we watch media, what do we see in the media? We see people with disabilities being projected as pitiable, like people who are just omba-omba. They need some money. They are on the streets, they are the beggars, right? Those are the stories we see in the media. As object of curiosity, when you see someone with disability, unataka kuangalia kidogo uone, ai, ni mtu ama si mtu, unashangaa. So, and those are the things we see in the media. We see them as sinister or evil, because when you see someone hana brain, hana nini, then you see this person is evil. And those are the stories we see in the media. So Pakripo, it has been explained very well. Laughable, people laugh at people with disabilities. As a burden, tunaona kuwa mtu akipata mtoto mwenye ulemavu, it's a burden, because hawezi wachia huyo mtoto mtu nyumbani, so he has to keep on taking care of a child with a disability, na hapo anapoteza, hawezi hataenda kazi, so it's a burden. Also an unsexual, and that stereotypes have been explained very well. So ableism and social media. So the way I said, it is very good to use social media as people with disabilities, but also the social media has done what we call ableism. So ableism refers to attitudes in society that devalue the limits and potential of persons with disabilities. Or in simple terms, is when people without disabilities use people with disability to laugh at them or even to make jokes about them. So, and there are these terms that we just take for granted, and we think we can just use, you are crazy. If you tell someone who has a psychosocial disability, you are crazy, you know that is stigmatizing that person. But all of us are victims of that. We are easier to say you are crazy, or this is so lame. When someone makes a statement that you don't like, you say this is so lame. What does it sound to a person with physical disability? Or she's such a psycho. You know such words? Such words are the ones that entrenches stereotypes. And then most of the time we share stickers and memes on social media. And this is not acceptable because it stigmatizes people with disabilities. I've used an example of this man He's very famous. His name is Fujiski. Nick, yeah. So he's very famous, but you know there's a meme that is being shared. Get you a man who will never lay a finger on you or walk out of your life. You know, this is very demeaning to a person with disability. As much as Nick has really made it in life, he has been an inspiration, and we say people with disability are not supposed to be inspiration, but he has changed the narrative of disability. But you see, with all that, people are still demeaning him because they are saying now the wife can never run away because Nick doesn't have hands to beat him. So these are some of the memes that are shared on social media, and people feel good about it, people laugh about it, but what does it do to the psyche of a person with disabilities? And then I'm putting on glasses, but I can't see, yeah. And the next one is also harmful content online, like this one. It was sometime trending in Kenya. Short people are the reason children's shoes are expensive. What does it mean? And and when people share such stuff, they really, they are happy about it, they have shared anything, and we see that. And because even us as persons with disability or disability activists, we don't see any harm about it, we don't talk about it. But these are the stereotypes that keep on demeaning or stigmatizing or marginalizing persons with disabilities. There is also another one, it is in Swahili. Imebaki tu nionje kiwete, alafu niwachane na hii story kabisa, nitakuwa kusettle. Yes, who can translate that to English speaking people? Who can translate that one? Imebaki nionje tu kiwete, alafu niwachane na hii story kabisa, nataka kusettle. And there is also another one, Kenyan girls wanaomba sana kuliko viwete.
So we start with this
We have
one.
a translator, yeah?
Now we have a translator, yeah.
Yeah. Could you put those tweets into
So it's
English?
like I have tested all different kinds of things, especially with the
Kind of girls.
kind of girls. And the first one, which is Kiwete.
Yes.
Are they girls or
Yes,
boys?
that's a man.
Yeah. So I have tested all these kind of things. But now I'm waiting to test a lame person, a person with disability, and then I'll be done with the business.
Yes. And that's because even people think if you have maybe sexual intercourse with person with disability, if you have like diseases like HIV, AIDS, you will get healed. Those are the stereotypes, the norms. And these are harmful content that are being shown online. But us as advocates of persons with disabilities, what are we doing to change the narrative? Do we point out such a post and do we report them to Facebook? Do we even say something about it? Or we just keep quiet? So as we go to social media, these are the things we are supposed to look at. Alafu, the one for kuomba sana kuliko viwete, who wants to translate it? There's this one, Kenyan ladies wanaomba pesa kuliko viwete.
Yeah, that's what.
The Kenyan ladies ask for money, are begging for money more than a lame person or a person with disability.
Yes. And this is because of these stereotypes we have about charity model, people with disabilities are ever begging. So when people beg a lot of money, they are compared to people with disabilities. I just want to show you how harmful content can be on social media, and it can continue stigmatizing persons with disabilities, and we should very be clear. When we see such a post, we point it out. For me, I'm ever on social media telling you this is wrong. And if you don't understand it, I report you on Facebook, because we cannot continue harming people with disabilities through social media. They have been done a lot of harm through mainstream media, which we don't have control over. But social media, every one of us has control over it, and we can really point out about it. So I just want to point out some of the work we did with Internews and how we use social media maybe to change the narrative of persons with disability. In Tanzania, we worked with so many organizations. I'm happy to see Mpilipili, Rashid. Hi. Hello. Yes, Rashid is from your widow, and I think we met and interacted so much. Rajab Mpilipili, right? Yes. Yeah, so one of the organizations we worked with was Lukiza Autism Foundation in Tanzania. So we trained Lukiza on social media use, and Lukiza used social media to use like 1.2 million people, Tanzanians, during the disability awareness campaign. They gained more than 1,000 followers on Instagram, and they increased their social media engagement by 980,000. So this, I'm just showing you some of the advantages of social media. This time they were doing a campaign, Autism Run, for the organization. So we just taught them how to use social media, how to tweet, how to open Instagram pages, and it really helped. So if you cannot get money to advertise on mainstream media, there are tricks, and I know people, there are very able speakers who are going to talk about how we are going to use social media and give us practical details on how we are going to use it so that we can change our representation on social media. We also worked with Yoido Uganda, the organization led by Mpilipili. And here we also trained youth on with disabilities on how to use social media. And there was, yeah, maybe you can talk about it. She's here. This picture is by Hira. Maybe you can talk about this.
Thank you. My name is Hajrat Mohammed. I am working with Yodo and communication officer there. Actually, I'm surprised to see myself there. It was an award which they gave me, the foundation called CFEYA, because I am using social media well to promote issue about disability in Tanzania. Actually, that page I was using to disability which are visible and not visible. Like mine, it's lupus, so I am making awareness there. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm just lucky I put on this slide and I met her here, so you can see it is something practical. I'm not talking just from imagination. So I wish everyone, you could have invited everyone here so that they can talk about the experience using social media. Yeah, and also in Cote d'Ivoire, we worked with this organization, and they used social media to reach online audience of more than 1,000, and they formed networks with, during their campaign, just because of social media, they got organization that could sponsor them. That is Medicines Sans Frontières, One Women, and the NGO Human for the World. Just during social media campaigns, people were able to know this is what they are doing in Cote d'Ivoire, and they were able to get sponsors. And even there was a Congolese artist who reached out to them and proposed a song to promote disability awareness. And politicians also have reached out and promising to implement disability policies. So social media is very powerful. After this, if you don't have a social media platform, if your organization is not very good in social media, just take advantage. You are going to interact and connect with so many people who are going to make your organization turn around. In Liberia, we worked with SATEC TV, FB Live, and they started the 1 hour. Every week they had a 1 hour inclusion hour where they could invite people with disabilities and they could talk about different experiences they had. And they also had a lot of impact with sponsors coming in and even being able to share what they do in the organization. Still in Cote d'Ivoire, these women had, they didn't really have a social media platform, so we opened from Facebook to Instagram to WhatsApp groups to help them, and more women with disabilities, specifically those from the union, became interested about using social media. So before the campaign, most of the women with disability didn't know how to create and even share content online. And after the campaign, all the women were interested and were learning and appreciating social networks. Because women, you know, they engage in embroidery, they do so much, but you cannot be able to see what they do online. So we taught them and they used it and it really helped them. And then what we used to do with this project, we had a hashtag, and all the project activities and partners, you can track it even if you go to Twitter and just hashtag Inclusive Media Project, you can be able to see so much that we did with their projects. So there are so many opportunities to have people with disability who are fully aware of their power to guide and influence discourse around people with disabilities issues using social media. The way I told, in my introduction, you have heard I'm a journalist, so I was a journalist. And I started the first program on disability in Kenya. When I started that program, I thought I was going to save people with disabilities because I thought I'm giving them a platform so to air stories of pity and stories of charity. But when I just, even the title labeled differently, I got a lot of criticism because they say that this is not the right terminology. So it was a learning experience for me. So I had to learn to train my team, and also now to change the way disability reporting and representation is done, because it is very important. If we really don't change the narrative of disability in the media, even in social media, we won't have any opportunities. Talk about job opportunities. If employers would still see people with disabilities as people who are beggars, people who are unworthy, will they give them education? Will they give them an employment opportunity? They won't. That's why we need to change the representation and even change the narrative of disability. So also we can encourage public discourse and change perceptions about people with disabilities. We can raise awareness surrounding issues of education of people with disabilities, and also to ensure content targeted towards people with disabilities is produced in accessible formats, and to create online disability champions. So after this training, I hope we are going to have so many champions who are going to change the narrative of disability, who are going to point out those harmful content and give the right content so that people can change their perception about disability, ili tuweze kubadilisha sura ya watu wenye ulemavu mitandaoni. So we can be able to do it. Yes. Yeah. So also I've done some study on social reproductive health of persons with disabilities and WhatsApp. And this is just to let maybe you know, like sexual reproductive health of persons with disabilities, especially women, it is not tackled. But if we have WhatsApp group for women with disabilities, in Kenya we have, they can be able to bring there someone who is a specialist and talk to them about sexual reproductive health, because it is never taught anywhere. So we can take advantage of such and have WhatsApp groups, we form WhatsApp groups where we can share our own experiences and educate ourselves on things that are really never talked about. We can also do inclusive education about that, and even inclusive media. When we were working with the widow, they came up with the Lugha Staha. Lugha Staha, Mpilipili, you want to talk about it?
Yes, good morning. Yeah, we worked with the Internews Tanzania, and during the Paza Sauti Yangu or Paza Sauti Yangu project, we were able to develop the guideline. It was a short pamphlet on how to use the language and communicate with persons with disability effectively. And that pamphlet is called Lugha Yenye Staha. So Lugha Yenye Staha means proper language. When you address a person with disability, you should use proper language. Instead of using people, use a person with physical disability. Instead of using blind in English is really accepted, but when you say kipofu, means blind, it is not accepted. Use to asiona, start with the personality of a person. So that is a thing. So and it is accessible in our website. You can write Yodo, YOWDO. You can search it online and you can find it and access it for free. But also I was about to add on the way we organize the online campaign, and we train youth with disabilities to champion, to air their voice using the social media, and there were 8 of them, if not mistaken, and one of them was Hajrat Mohammed, previously before he even become one of our working colleague. So one of the things which made us to take her and consider her for the employment at Yodo was the way she was active in using the social media to air out about invisible disability. So that is the thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. So you can also be active on social media and land a job like the way she did. She got a job with the organization as a communication officer now. And also, so in finishing, I just want to finish with this quote by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. The problem with stereotypes is not that they are untrue, but they are incomplete. They make one story become the only story. So it is true people with disabilities, some of them beg, right? Some of them have not gone to school. Some of them, all those stereotypes they talk about, they are there. But that is not the only story we can tell about people with disabilities. There are so many stories we can talk about: positive portrayal of person with disability, a person who is a scholar, a person who has excelled in education, and a person who is a father, a mother, and taking care of the community. There are several stories we can talk about. We can also talk about the policies, if the government is doing well, what the government is doing about people with disabilities. So there are so many stories. So when we go online and start our campaigns, let us not just talk about the negative stereotypes, because they are pity and people would want to talk about it. So thank you so much, and I came in today and I hope you are going to be together in other sessions. Asanteni sana na Mungu awabariki.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline, for that presentation, and I think the perfect inspiration for our session after the break, where we will get into doing some actual media workshopping, which will be led by Mike. We are due for our break, but I wanted to ensure we had time for a couple of questions for either Kathleen or Jacqueline. I just realised that was rhyming. Is there anyone that would like to ask a question or comment of either of our two presenters this morning? I can see a hand there, and I can see another hand there, and there. Okay.
Okay, thank you. My name is Jackson. My name is Jackson Elman Shia from Tanzania. I am a disability inclusion facilitator. So I have a little bit to add in the session that Madam gave us. So we as a youth with disability and an advocate, we should strive better to impress or promote a positive vibe in social media. Example, myself, I have 10,000 followers in social media. So I use that advantage to impress other people with disability to have a positive vibe and skip from what that madam have said, that the harmful content. As you know, a human mindset is the most powerful organ. So it can consume everything, either harmful or useful or potential. So social media is very addictive, as you know. So we as a youth or person with disability advocate, we should be selective what content to consume and what content to leave behind. So we can use a personal lifestyle to influence other people. So example, social media. Example, myself, I use my social medias to impress and show others that I read books, I listen to podcasts, and posting other picture, interesting picture. So someone is some youth is social media, or maybe other people, such as you. When can display, when display page, my Instagram page can be influenced. You see? And I have a little bit to add here. that's enough.
But he just agreed with what you were saying, so keep up with the good work.
Habari ya asubuhi. Good morning. Okay, my name is Zakia Shaban Daudi. I'm from Zanzibar, from Jumuiya ya Wanawake wenye Ulemavu Zanzibar. I think I have a question, but it's like a contribution. From the presentation there from Madam Jackie, she was talking about the media advocacy, but I think it was based on those social medias, but in reality, we can see that many people who are having disability, example from my context there in Zanzibar, don't use those smartphones, so they don't know how to even to represent themselves. Example, Juauza, recently we were having the training of women with disabilities, but when she stand up, one participant, when you ask her what kind of disability you have, she really doesn't know how to describe herself. So I think first we should focus on maybe on schools first. Yeah. Also, we can have like a program of children, like those cartoons on how to tell their names. That is my contribution.
Oh, okay, yeah, so from education, that's why we have even inclusive education, and we are fighting for inclusive education. Because socialization starts at a very young age. But some of the special schools even in Tanzania and Kenya, what are they called? Shule za vipofu, shule za viziwi, right? So if we have those shule za vipofu, viziwi, how are we going to change the narrative of disability in our community? And that's why we are saying we have to start somewhere. Like how your widow have done with Lugastaha. And then we have some champions and more champions giving the right terminologies. People will start changing one by one. So that's what I tell people. We can just start by having like maybe 10 people doing campaigns, changing the narrative, and then we are going to change about the narrative about disability. And I've seen it in 2 years that I've worked on inclusive media project. We just need to have champions, and they are going to make a difference. So don't really feel that you are small, you can't do anything. Just start from where you are, and then you can educate the whole community. Asante.
Okay, good morning. I'm Happiness George from ADD as an art young leader. I just want to add to Madam Jacqueline's presentation. Myself, I'm a good boss of social media, so I always meet with some lot of bullying. You can find a person with disability maybe posting or just sharing something, just putting his content or our content to the social media, but you can find in the comment section that people are just posting or commenting negativities. So my opinion or my just advice is that us as advocates, as we have heard from Madam Jacqueline, that there are some sort of ways we can try comforting people. So you can find someone is being heartbroken because when you post a certain content concerning you, maybe you made some negativities. So us as we are doing advocate movements, we have to find some sort of ways to help those people, maybe comforting them or just encouraging them. Maybe either you can just find that person, you can just DM that person or just comment positively so that you encourage in order to not to be heartbroken with negativity comments in the social media. Thank you.
Okay. Nice, and another thing, you need to grow a thick skin. Because when we are talking about stereotypes, these are the things that people grew up with. You know, when we grew up, no one was teaching us about disability and even inclusion. Who has ever been taught about disability? No one. So the things we know is because of our socialization as a society. where were parents or people before us saying people with disability are cursed, they are evil, they are what. So those are socialization. So as an advocate, you need to do what? Grow a thick skin so that you can be able to survive and change the narrative. Yeah.